Every medium has its strengths. Books are the best at having a massive scope, unrestricted by budget, as well as allowing the reader to really get in the heads of all the characters. Movies and TV allow the viewer to connect with the characters on a more human front. Reading about somebody crying or reading about somebody dying and actually watching them cry or die are two completely different experiences. Animation can allow for some of the best action sequences ever made. Things that are physically impossible or would be extremely difficult to make look natural in live action can be represented by animation. This is my plea for you to watch Demon Slayer. So what is the strength of gaming as a medium? What does a video game do that can't be reproduced by another medium? Since you're watching a video about game design, I'm sure you already have an answer to this question, and my guess is that it has something to do with the concept of immersion. There comes an innate sense of immersion when engaging with any medium, as we tend to use art as a way to escape from reality for a moment, to focus on one thing for a while that isn't the current state of politics or some personal drama that weighs on our mental health. What makes games unique is how that is used. When reading a book or watching a movie, we get wrapped up in other people's problems. What are they going to do next? How will they beat the villain? What will they say? With games, oftentimes, those questions are more internally focused. What am I going to do next? How will I beat the villain? What will I say? That sense of immersion where all thoughts about the outside world disappear and the sole focus of your attention is on whatever is in front of you is enhanced by the interactivity inherent to video games. I recently played Dead Space and found it to be a wonderful and very immersive experience. Not because of its good combat, mediocre puzzles, or its predictable and rather bland twist, but because its atmosphere and its commitment to total immersion. Everything in Dead Space is given context to make it believable in the world. The weapons found throughout the campaign aren't even really weapons. The pulse rifle is the only exception as it was used by Ishimura's security, while everything else was just a tool that Isaac uses as a weapon. The Ishimura was a mining vessel sent to extract materials from comets and harvest supplies from other planets in the galaxy. While the plasma cutter is a great weapon that can reliably dismember the necromorphs, its intended use was for cutting up boulders so they would be small enough to fit into furnaces for smelting. The line gun was a more heavy-duty version of the plasma cutter, designed to split apart large boulders before more refined and accurate cuts could be made with the plasma cutter. This goes for pretty much every single weapon in Dead Space. The disc ripper, the flamethrower, the super collider. Every weapon besides the pulse rifle that is available to the player was once a normal tool, useful to miners who worked with heavy and resource-rich space rocks. This also goes for the equipment that the player has access to. Both the stasis and kinesis module are clearly tools that both the player and Isaac shape into being useful for combat. Being able to move around heavy objects is an extremely useful tool to miners, who deal with giant boulders and large machinery, but it also allows for Isaac and the player to clear debris from doorways or move hazardous materials. The invention of stasis was probably a godsend for miners, allowing them to slow down either space debris or malfunctioning machinery. However, for us, the use is to slow down the charging necromorphs and get in some good shots. Even the rig suit that Isaac wears is only really useful by accident. The suit has no real place in a futuristic military, but as a suit to protect workers from flying debris and the vacuum of space, it works wonders. It was made to stop rocks from impaling the wearer, and now it protects us from the slash of a necromorph. Even though I wouldn't consider the puzzles to be anything special, the way they are properly contextualized and given a sense of solving a real problem allows them to become a net positive for the game. Using the kinesis ability to move around objects or stasis to slow something down in order to pass through felt more in tune with the identity of these being tools provided to workers. This contrasts nicely with how the player and Isaac mold them into tools for combat as well. The game makes puzzles that feel real, rather than artificial game lengtheners, even though on a technical level, that is exactly what they are. Another thing put into the game to pull the player into the world is the sound design. The game outside of combat uses fairly light music and is mixed with surrounding ambiance. Outside of listening to audio logs or having another character call Isaac, the player is left alone with the natural sounds of the space station and its new inhabitants. The only thing accompanying you is your clanking footsteps and the sound of Isaac's breath. That breath does play a key role in providing a gameplay benefit as well as atmospheric atmospheric tension. The breathing and its accompanying heartbeat add a lot to pulling the player into the world. I can't think of many games that allow you to, at all times, hear your character's breath or heartbeat. It allows us to ground Isaac as a real human being. As Isaac runs out of breath in zero gravity, his breaths become stronger as if he's trying to pull in as much air as possible in order to keep standing. This provides the player with an audio cue for when air capacity is nearly depleted, while also ratcheting up the tension. As combat ensues and Isaac exerts himself, both his heart rate and breathing become more erratic, and that matches the same struggle that the player is feeling due to the charging necromorphs. While I think making Isaac a silent protagonist was a bit of a mistake due to the awkward conversations he seems to get into, he does have a personality that was pumped into him. Most of that is captured in his audio design. In theory, this video could be about any number of incredibly immersive games. Dead Space's Ishimura didn't captivate me in the same way BioShock's Rapture did. I don't think Dead Space's immersive quality matches up to Metro Exodus in the moment-to-moment gameplay. The sense of discovery and wonder never came close to that of Dark Souls or Skyrim for me. The horror aspects never got me as terrified as the recent Resident Evil titles. However, there is one thing that Dead Space has over all of these games: a diegetic heads-up display. BioShock and Dark Souls are incredibly immersive games that I love immensely, but both have a convenient health bar placed for the player's use. These are barriers between the player and the game, as they are disconnected from the world that they're supposed to be enhancing. Granted, these are extremely small barriers, and most people wouldn't even notice or care, but they are there nonetheless. Metro Exodus on its Ranger difficulty ditches most of its HUD elements, but when using a workbench, the game still uses a game interface to upgrade equipment and weapons. That means that even in Metro Exodus, what I consider to be the most immersive game I have ever played, there exists a small barrier between myself and the world I have stepped into. My point here is not to criticize health bars or upgrade menus, but to show that making a game without them is extremely hard and takes a very specific set of circumstances. How would you accurately represent health or stamina in the world of Dark Souls? How could the player upgrade their weapons in Metro Exodus without this upgrade interface? It's really hard to do. And the reason I bring up these other games is to contrast with how Dead Space uses its theme to its full advantage. What I found so impressive about Dead Space was its diegetic HUD, meaning that every aspect of the HUD has an in-world representation. The health bar slices down the middle of Isaac's back, while the stasis meter sits on the right shoulder. Anytime the player is left in a vacuum, the remaining oxygen level is shown. Each weapon has a digital ammo counter. The inventory is represented in-game as something that Isaac will physically look around as you navigate the digital interface. The map objectives and logs are also viewed from this same menu. When passing items, a digital image and name will appear for your convenience, but also as a function of the suit. It will scan the item and highlight it for Isaac. The navigation tool is represented as a line on the ground as another function of the suit. Anytime a HUD element pops up, it will always be displayed in front of Isaac, so it's visible to him even when the player swings the camera around to look at his face. These are all represented in-game, and they all serve a function outside the context of a video game. While it isn't clear if Isaac has his own visible health bar and stasis meter, having them on his back allows others to see his current status. The map and navigator would be priceless tools for workers in order to quickly get where their services were needed, especially when on a new ship or on an unfamiliar floor. The inventory and logs could be quickly accessed at a moment's notice in order to pull out a new tool or check up on a manual. Dead Space uses a similar interface to Metro Exodus when upgrading the suit or any weapons, but they differ in terms of contextualization. In Metro, it's just a standard upgrade menu. Granted, it has some nice visuals, but you are still interacting with a digital interface and not something baked into the world of the game. While in Dead Space, it's a terminal with a digital interface that Isaac is navigating through. The player is navigating the terminal through Isaac instead of navigating the interface directly. While not a huge deal in isolation, it's the overall commitment that Dead Space makes to have its entire HUD represented in the world that makes an impact. And to be frank, it simply wouldn't be as cohesive if it wasn't in this setting. Is some of this stuff realistic? Of course not. In real life, we don't have health bars, but it does subscribe to a reality of the Dead Space universe that allows the world to feel fleshed out and real despite its blatant artificiality. One thing I love about Dead Space is that while it commits itself to the world, it doesn't introduce realism for the sake of immersion. One of my biggest pet peeves is when games try to make things realistic for the sake of realism. The prime example is usually picking up items. I really hate when games require you to pick up a ton of items, and every time you need to watch an animation. Some are worse than others, like Far Cry 3's looting animation, but stopping everything just to pick up an item can be frustrating if it serves no other purpose than to be realistic. I've been playing Resident Evil 5 with a friend, and at least in that game during combat, picking up items that you might badly need is a risk when multiple zombies are running you down. Dead Space, however, completely leaves out this stuff. Picking up an item is as simple as walking over to it and pressing A on the controller. It never disrupts the gameplay. Where these types of animations are more appropriate is when you're interacting with a save station, store, or workbench. These are places where the player is intentionally disrupting the core gameplay to either buy a new suit upgrade or to save their game. So having a short animation to transition between these two states of play is serving a purpose. These infrequent and purposeful touches of realism are welcomed, or at the very least, tolerable. If immersion is the core strength of gaming, then Dead Space is clearly a leader in the industry. While I found certain aspects of Dead Space to be just average, its atmosphere and attention to detail in its world design are without a doubt first class. The fact that the entire experience is represented in-game and almost disconnected from its reality of being a video game is something that I want to see more of in the future. Immersion is total and comprehensive. It doesn't break when you need to glance at your conveniently placed health bar. It doesn't break when you open the map or store. It doesn't break when you need to quickly use an air canister from your inventory. The only time that immersion breaks is when you pause the game. Designing Dead Space to be a holistic experience must have taken an ungodly amount of time and effort from a bunch of very talented developers, and it pays off for the player. While Visceral Games is gone, their spirit lives on in the current remake by Motive Studios. After watching their most recent Fear Reimagined showcase, it's clear that Visceral's design principles of making a truly holistic world are alive and well. I look forward to the remake, and can't wait to stomp around the Ishimura again with a fresh coat of paint.
Isaac, it's me. I wish I could talk to you. I'm sorry.